Alex, don't you think you're being a little sensitive? My fiancée, Caroline Wells, stood across from me, her tone clipped and cool. I didn't answer, because her hand was still resting on Ryan Vance's wrist. It was just a toast, she added. Don't read too much into it. I looked at them. One was the woman I'd been engaged to for 3 years. The other was the man she'd always held a candle for. Then what should I be reading into it? I asked. Ryan just smiled, trying to smooth things over. Alex, man, it's not what you think. And what is it that I think? I shot back. No one spoke. Somewhere in the private room, someone snickered. I nodded, my own smile vanishing. Keep drinking, I said. Don't let me ruin the party. Caroline's expression soured. What's that supposed to mean? I slid the ring off my finger. It means exactly what you think. This engagement is off. Panic finally flickered in her eyes. But I was done explaining. 01. I had a bad feeling when I went to pick up my ice queen of a CEO fiancé. Caroline had changed the location last minute, saying she was entertaining clients and that I should just meet her at the club. She was always like that, making decisions without explanation, changing plans without discussion, as if I, her fiancé, were just a default setting in her life. When I arrived, the door to the private suite was ajar. The noise from inside was loud. The clinking of glasses mixed with rowdy cheers, one wave after another. I just reached the doorway when I saw Caroline standing by the sofa, her head tilted back slightly, her arm linked with another man's. They were drinking champagne, arms intertwined like a bride and groom. The lighting was dim and intimate. Her profile was cast in a cool light, but her eyes held a relaxed quality I rarely saw. I knew the man, Ryan Vance, Caroline's old flame, the one that got away. He was also the rising star her company had been heavily promoting for the past year. His official title was partner, but everyone on the inside knew what, or who, had gotten him there. The whole room was laughing. Someone whistled. Another person slapped the table in approval. To Caroline, come on, Ryan, don't back down from that. I stood in the doorway, not moving. In that single moment, a thought hit me with crystalline clarity. In their eyes, I didn't even have the right to interrupt. I pushed the door open and walked in. The room fell silent. Caroline saw me first. There was no panic on her face, no guilt, not even a hint of embarrassment at being caught. She just frowned slightly, as if annoyed by my inconvenient arrival. As if I weren't her fiancé, but a stranger who had crashed her party. Ryan reacted a beat later, unlinking his arm and smiling. Alex, hey, don't get the wrong idea. We were just playing a little game, getting into the spirit of things. He spoke casually, but his tone had a condescending sort of familiarity to it, as if he were reminding everyone just how close he and Caroline were. I didn't look at him. My gaze swept over the liquor bottles on the table before landing back on Caroline. Should I come back later? I asked. She took a sip of her champagne, her voice even. You're overthinking it. This is a client dinner. She said it so naturally that it made me realize this moment meant absolutely nothing to her. People exchanged nervous glances, the atmosphere growing stiff. I let out a small laugh. A real one. Don't stop, I told them. Keep going. The room went completely quiet. Someone's glass froze halfway to their lips. Someone else instinctively looked at Caroline, waiting for her to take the lead. She finally met my gaze, her voice turning cold. Alex, what is your problem? I am Alexander Thorne, heir to Thorne Industries, currently heading our domestic core operations. To the outside world, I'm known for being mild-mannered and rational, someone who rarely loses his temper. Caroline probably saw me the same way. I walked to the table, picked up the half-finished glass she'd been drinking from, and set it down. It's simple, I said. This engagement, as of tonight, is over. She froze for a second. Then her face hardened. Are you seriously throwing a tantrum right now? She hissed, her voice low. This is not the time or place. I nodded. You're right. It's not. It was no longer the time or place for pretending. Ryan jumped in, his voice oozing with false sincerity. Alex, don't be rash. Caroline's just been under a lot of stress at work. Don't take it personally. He leaned forward slightly as he spoke, as if defending her. I finally turned to him. And who are you? I asked. The smile on his face froze. Caroline scowled. That's enough. I didn't say another word. I simply pulled the ring from the fourth finger of my left hand and placed it on the glass table. It made a sharp, clean sound as it hit the surface. The sound wasn't loud, but everyone heard it. "The engagement is void," I said. "I've already covered the bill for tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening." With that, I turned and left. Behind me, I could hear whispers, a sharp intake of breath, the sound of someone starting to follow. Caroline's voice, sharp with anger, cut through the noise. "Alexander Thorne, you're going to regret this." I didn't look back. As the elevator descended, I took out my phone and sent a text to my assistant. It was short. "Reevaluate all partnerships with the Wells family. Effective immediately." When the message sent, notification popped up, a strange sense of calm washed over me. From the moment I stepped into that room, I understood. She had never seen me as her equal. That being the case, there was no reason to salvage this relationship. 02. The next morning, I arrived at the office as usual. The conference room was brightly lit. The project team was already assembled, and the presentation materials for the joint venture with Wells Corp were laid out on the table. This was a project Caroline had been overseeing personally. We'd spent 6 months in preliminary talks. The proposal had been revised 4 times, and resources were already earmarked. The final sign-off was supposed to be a formality today. After I sat down, my assistant handed me the file and whispered, "The team from Wells Corp is here." I nodded, showing no reaction. 10 minutes into the meeting, Caroline walked in. She wore a sharply tailored suit. Her hair was perfect, and her expression was coolly composed, as if last night had never happened. She sat down across from me, opened her file, and spoke in a formal tone. "Regarding this collaboration, Wells Corp has confirmed the capital allocation. We can move forward with implementation." She didn't look at me, as if she had decided that our personal issues had no place in the boardroom. The project manager continued the presentation, and the meeting seemed to proceed normally, until I raised my hand, signaling for him to stop. All eyes immediately turned to me. "We're putting this project on hold," I said. The room was silent for a few seconds. The project manager looked stunned. "Mr. Thorne, but we already confirmed." "I know," I cut him off. "We're re-evaluating." Caroline finally looked up. Her brow furrowed almost imperceptibly before smoothing out again. "Alex," she said, her voice low and tight, "this project has already been approved." I turned a page in the file. Approved doesn't mean it's a go. Her fingertips froze on the edge of her document. I could feel her anger radiating across the table. But she remained restrained, not blowing up in front of everyone. She just said coolly, "We'll talk privately after the meeting." I nodded. The meeting ended early. As everyone else filed out, only a few of us remained. Ryan Vance was there, too. He had been sitting next to Caroline, silent the entire time. Now, he was the first to stand up, offering a placating smile. "Alex, what happened yesterday? Everyone had a bit too much to drink. You shouldn't let it get to you." I looked at him. "Are you here today as a representative of Wells Corp, or in a personal capacity?" I asked. He was taken aback. Caroline's face hardened. "He's one of the project leads." "Good," I said. "Then during a meeting, non-essential comments should be kept to a minimum." The air in the room turned to ice. The smile on Ryan's face evaporated. Caroline stood up and glared at me. "Come with me." Outside, the hallway was quiet. She stopped and turned to face me, her usual air of superiority back in place. "Your behavior last night was incredibly irrational," she said. "I don't deny that you have a right to be upset, but you can't let it affect our work." I leaned against the wall, saying nothing. She continued, "We can discuss the engagement later, but business is business. You should know how to separate the two." She said it with such entitlement, as if my decision to halt the project was just a childish tantrum. "Now that we're no longer connected, it should be easier to talk business," I said. She was clearly thrown by that. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Wells Corp is now just another potential partner," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "You're not entitled to special treatment." Her breathing grew shallow. "Do you think Thorne Industries is going to miss anything without the Wells family?" she scoffed. "My father approved this deal." I pushed myself off the wall. "Your father approved it on the condition of our marriage," I said. "That condition no longer exists." Her composure finally cracked. "Are you threatening me?" she asked. "No," I said calmly. "I'm mitigating risk." She stared at me for a few seconds, as if seeing me for the first time. Ryan had followed us out, his tone impatient. Alex, don't make this ugly. You know how much the Wells family has helped you over the years. I turned my head to look at him. Which part are you referring to exactly? I asked. The question caught him off guard. He couldn't answer. I pressed on. Did you come to Thorn Industries for a partnership, or did we come begging at your door? His face flushed a deep red. Caroline raised a hand to stop him, then looked back at me, her voice dropping even lower. What do you want? Due diligence, I said. From the top. You're wasting time. No, you've been wasting mine. Her hand clenched into a fist at her side. Down the hall, an employee walked by, then quickly averted their gaze and hurried away. Caroline took a deep breath, her tone softening slightly. We'll talk about this later. She turned to leave. I called out to her. Caroline. She stopped. You might not have realized something, I said. After last night, I am no longer obligated to move at your pace. Her shoulders tensed. She didn't turn around. That afternoon, the project team received a formal notice. The Wells Core Partnership was officially on hold. Not canceled, shelved. For a company, that's a far more unnerving fate than an outright rejection. That evening, Caroline called again. I didn't answer. Ryan's call came in right after. I declined it instantly. Half an hour later, they were in the lobby of my building. The front desk called up to ask if I would see them. Send them up, I said. The atmosphere in the conference room was even heavier than it had been that morning. Caroline sat down and got straight to the point. What exactly are you trying to do? I pushed a new assessment report across the table to her. This is the latest internal conclusion from Thorn Industries, I said. In the short term, moving forward is not advisable. She flipped through a few pages, her expression growing colder with each one. The reason? Lack of synergy, I said. Ryan couldn't hold back any longer. You're doing this on purpose. I looked at him. You can assume that. He shot to his feet, his voice edged with anger. Alex, don't forget that the Wells family had a hand in getting you to where you are today. The moment he said it, the room went dead silent. I slowly rose from my chair. My position was given to me by Thorn Industries, I said. Not by the Wells family. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Caroline watched this exchange, and for the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed her face. She seemed to be finally realizing that I wasn't just throwing a fit. I was drawing a line. I'm killing this project, I said. By the end of the day, her head snapped up. You can't. I can. I interrupted. It's a Thorn Industries decision. I hit the intercom on the table, summoning my assistant. Notify the legal department. Terminate the process. My assistant nodded and left the room. Caroline stood frozen, her face pale. 03. News that the Thornwells venture was shelved spread quickly through our circles. There was no formal announcement, but it was enough to raise suspicions. A deal that wasn't dead, but wasn't moving forward was the most unsettling status of all. People who had been flocking to the Wells family suddenly became more cautious, their words more measured. I didn't bring up the Wells family again. I held my meetings, advanced my other projects, and acted as if their partnership had never been on the table. It was Ryan Vance, ironically, who kept popping up. He made appearances at various events, dropping hints that I was being emotional, mixing business with pleasure, and that my personal issues were holding up the deal. I heard all of this secondhand. When my assistant reported it, he was discreet. He's been making a lot of noise lately. I nodded and told him to keep an eye on it. A couple of days later, an invitation to a private dinner landed on my desk. The host was an old acquaintance in the supply chain business, and the guest list was full of familiar names, including Ryan Vance. I hadn't planned on going, but after seeing the list, I changed my mind. The dinner was an exclusive club, secluded but high-end. When I arrived, most of the guests were already there. The lights were low, the music was soft, and several bottles of excellent vintage whiskey sat on the table. As soon as I walked in, people greeted me. Alex, long time no see. I nodded in response and found an empty seat. Before long, Ryan came over, glass in hand. He was dressed impeccably tonight, his smile wider and more practiced than usual. Alex, didn't expect to see you here, he said. Heard you were swamped. I manage, I said. He slid into the seat next to me, his tone familiar. You know what happened with Wells Corp the other day? It took everyone by surprise. I didn't reply, just swirled the amber liquid in my glass. He kept talking, but it's understandable. When feelings are involved, it's hard to be completely rational. He said it softly, but it was clearly meant to be overheard. A few people nearby heard him, and their eyes drifted in our direction. I looked up at him. "Are you here to talk business? Or to gossip?" I asked. His smile faltered for a second before he recovered. "We're all friends here. Just making conversation." "Then let's be clear," I said. He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" I set my glass down, my voice steady and calm. "I've heard about the things you've been saying around town." The table fell quiet. Ryan's face shifted. "I was just telling the truth." "Which part was the truth?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. I continued. "Was it the part where I'm vindictive? Or the part where this project is on hold because I can't get over my personal feelings?" He let out a short, impatient laugh. "Alex, do you really have to be so direct?" "You started it," I said, looking him in the eye. "If you have the guts to say it, don't be afraid to own it." Someone nearby, sensing the tension, froze with their glass in midair. Ryan took a deep breath, his voice low. "Fine, I'll be direct. Wells and Thorne have been partners for years. For you to kill a deal with one word, it doesn't look good." "For who?" I asked. He was speechless. I didn't give him a moment to recover. "Does it not look good for Wells Corp? Or does it not look good for you?" With that, the mood at the table shifted entirely. His face flushed, and he raised his voice slightly. "What are you trying to say?" I leaned back in my chair and looked at him. "All these events you've been attending lately, in what capacity are you here?" "As a partner at Wells Corp," he said quickly. "Which partnership agreement is that?" I asked. He froze. I went on. "You don't hold any shares in Wells Corp. You have no decision-making power on projects, and you're not authorized to sign off on finances." People at the table started exchanging glances. Ryan wanted to argue, but he couldn't find an opening. My voice remained even. "The only reason you're in this room is because Caroline Wells brought you along. That doesn't mean you belong here." As the words landed, someone coughed softly. Ryan's face was now a mask of fury. He shot to his feet, his voice shaking with anger. "Alex, don't push it." I looked up at him. "You were never here on your own merit." The entire room went silent. The background music suddenly seemed jarringly loud. The host, clearly panicking, tried to intervene. "Hey, we're all friends here. Let's have a drink, everyone." I stood up and straightened my cuffs. "I've had my drink," I said. "I'm leaving." No one tried to stop me. As I reached the door, I heard the sound of a chair scraping behind me. Someone said something in a low voice, but I couldn't make it out. The moment the elevator doors closed, my phone buzzed. Caroline's name flashed on the screen. I ignored it. Back in the car, my assistant handed me a file. "Ryan Vance's project history for the last 2 years," he said. "There are a lot of red flags." I flipped through a few pages. Some projects were clearly led by Wells Corp, but he had presented them to others as his own. For other deals, he was only involved in the initial stages but took credit for the final results. I closed the file. "Compile all of this," I said. My assistant nodded. "Should I make a move now?" "No," I said. "We wait." The next day, Ryan Vance was nowhere to be seen in public. He had been temporarily suspended from all external duties by Wells Corp. The official reason was simple. He was no longer a suitable representative. When the news reached me, I was in a meeting. My assistant came in and reported it quietly. I just nodded. After the meeting, I received a text. It was from Caroline. A single sentence. "Are you satisfied now?" I stared at the screen and didn't reply. That evening, someone told me Ryan Vance had been barred from entering a major networking event. Not just ignored, but explicitly refused entry. He stood at the door while security politely blocked his way. In that moment, he must have finally understood. Without the light of the Wells family shining on him, he was nothing. 04. The day after Ryan Vance was suspended, the Wells family finally decided they couldn't wait any longer. It wasn't Caroline who came to me. It was her parents. At 10 in the morning, just as I was finishing an internal meeting, my assistant knocked and informed me that Mr. and Mrs. Wells had been waiting in the guest lounge for 20 minutes. Their request was polite. Their presence was not. I had a conference room prepared and went to meet them myself. When I walked in, they were already seated. Mr. Wells wore a dark suit, his posture ramrod straight, his expression severe. Mrs. Wells was impeccably put together, her makeup flawless. She clutched her handbag, her eyes scanning me from head to toe as I entered. I gave a slight nod and sat down across from them. "Alex," Mr. Wells began, I came today because we need to talk. Of course, I said calmly. He didn't beat around the bush. Wells Corp and Thorn Industries have worked together for years, always successfully. This sudden halt to the project is causing significant disruption. I listened without comment. Mrs. Wells took over, her tone softer but carrying a clear weight. We've heard about what happened between you and Caroline. It's normal for young people to have disagreements, but it shouldn't interfere with business. She looked at me with absolute certainty, as if she assumed I would defer to her. This engagement was an agreement between our two families, Mr. Wells continued. If it weren't for our family's endorsement back then, you wouldn't be in the position you're in today. The moment he said that, the air in the room grew heavy. I looked up at him. Which year are you referring to? I asked. Mr. Wells frowned. What do you mean? I just want to be clear, I said. Are you talking about the 2 years Thorn Industries was facing a capital crunch, or the later expansion phase? He didn't answer right away. I went on. The first major acquisition by Thorn Industries happened while my father was still in charge. Wells Corp was not involved in that. Mrs. Wells's expression flickered. I opened a folder in front of me and pushed several documents across the table. Our second major collaboration was 3 years ago, I said. Wells Corp initiated that deal. The condition was our marriage. Mr. Wells's face hardened. What's the point of digging up the past? Mrs. Wells asked, her tone sharp with annoyance. There's a point, I said, because you just mentioned giving me a leg up. The room fell silent. I spoke slowly. A partnership is mutually beneficial, not a handout. When the engagement was active, I was willing to let that distinction remain blurry. Now, that's no longer necessary. Mr. Wells's face turned to stone. So you're disavowing our history? History is built on respect, I said, looking at him. Not on leverage. Mrs. Wells's fingers tightened on the strap of her handbag. Alex, don't forget you once called us uncle and auntie. I nodded. That was out of courtesy, but courtesy can't be used as a bargaining chip. With that, Mrs. Wells's face went pale. Mr. Wells's voice was low and dangerous. Do you really think Thorn Industries doesn't need the Wells family anymore? I don't think it, I said. It's a fact. He slammed his hand on the table. You're arrogant. I didn't back down. If that's how you read the situation, then we truly have nothing left to discuss. The only sound in the room was the hum of the air conditioner. After a few seconds, Mr. Wells reined in his anger, his tone softening. What do you want, then? I've already stated the process, I said. A complete reevaluation. How long will that take? It depends. That answer made their expressions darken even further. Mrs. Wells finally lost her composure. Are you trying to force our family to bow down? I looked at her. I'm not forcing anyone. You came to me. His expression froze. He stared at me for a long time, as if he were seeing a complete stranger. Caroline never showed up. I knew she was waiting in the lobby downstairs. She didn't come in because she knew, in this room, she had no voice. Mr. Wells stood up and straightened his suit jacket. Fine, he said. Since you've made your position clear, there's no need to waste any more time. Mrs. Wells rose with him. Before leaving, she gave me one last look. It held none of a senior's warmth, only cold assessment and resentment. After the door closed, the room was quiet again. My assistant came in to clear the documents. Should I follow up? He asked quietly. No need, I said. That afternoon, Wells Corp tried to contact Thorn Industries through back channels. Some were old business partners. Others were mutual acquaintances acting as mediators. I refused to see any of them. Toward evening, my assistant brought me a new risk analysis report. This details the capital dependency of the 3 core projects at Wells Corp, he said. Thorn Industries has a significant stake in one of them. I flipped to the last page. It was the final thread connecting us, and the one piece the Wells family truly could not afford to lose. Proceed as planned, I said. My assistant nodded and left to carry it out. That night, Wells Corp received a formal notification. Key financial backing for that project was being withdrawn. Not all of it, but enough to make them feel the pressure. Late that night, I stood at my office window, looking out at the city lights. I could already predict how the Wells family would react, but they were the ones who had pushed me to this point. And this was my final, unambiguous answer. 05. After the key funding was pulled from the Wells project, the fallout was faster than I'd anticipated. It wasn't a loud explosion or a public scandal, but a subtle shift in the landscape. Procedures that were once rubber-stamped were now subject to endless review. Deadlines that had been agreed upon now required additional justification. Several previously enthusiastic partners started hedging their bets, their language becoming more cautious. Caroline Wells, more than anyone, would understand these subtle tremors without needing an explanation. On the third day, she appeared at my office door. Unannounced. The receptionist tried to stop her, but she just stated her name. My assistant's voice was hesitant when he buzzed me. "Ms. Wells is here." I told him to let her in. The moment the door opened, I looked up. She stood there, her suit jacket unbuttoned, her hair slightly disheveled. There were faint, dark circles under her eyes. It was the first time I had ever seen her look like this. Nothing like the Caroline Wells who was always in complete control. She walked in and closed the door behind her. The office was silent. "Did you have to take it this far?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "I geste vorher zusieht." She didn't move. "You didn't just pull out of a deal," she said. "You know exactly what that funding line meant to my family." I looked at her, not denying it. "And?" I asked. She took a deep breath, visibly trying to control her emotions. "That night," she paused, "it really was just for a client." I didn't respond. She continued, "I've already dealt with Ryan. He's been removed from all external company affairs from now on." I nodded. "That's your decision," I said. "It has nothing to do with me." Her fingers curled into a fist. "Do you have to be so cold?" "I've always been this way," I said, looking at her. "You just never bothered to notice before." She was quiet for a few seconds, then finally walked over and sat in the chair across from my desk. "We've known each other for years," she said. "Doesn't that count for anything?" "I've considered it," I said. A flicker of hope lit up her eyes. "Then why?" "I considered it. I cut her off, and that's why we're at this point." She froze. My voice was steady. "You're used to putting people in their proper place. For you, I was always the most suitable option." The color drained from her face. "You never once stopped to think what would happen if I decided not to stay in that place." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I stood up and walked to the window. "Are you here to ask me to come back, or are you here to ask me to continue propping up your family?" She finally spoke, her voice much softer. "I just wanted to explain." I turned to face her. "Then let me be clear, too," I said. The day the engagement was canceled, the only thing left between us was our respective positions. Her eyes welled up, turning red at the rims. It was the first time she had ever lost her composure in front of me. "Are you so sure," she asked, "that you want to burn this bridge completely?" "I'm not sure about the bridge," I said. "I'm sure about my direction." She fell silent for a long time. The only sound in the office was the low hum of the ventilation. After a while, she whispered, "You've changed." I shook my head. "No, you're just finally seeing me clearly." That sentence seemed to be the final straw. She shot to her feet, her voice cracking. "You were never like this before. And you were never like you are now," I retorted. "The only difference is that back then, I chose to look the other way." A tear finally escaped and rolled down her cheek. It wasn't a sob, just a single, uncontrolled sign of chaos. She quickly wiped it away, as if disgusted with herself. "If that night I hadn't," she started, then stopped. I didn't give her the chance to finish. "There are no ifs," I said. The words were quiet, but they made her freeze. She looked at me, and for the first time, her eyes held no superiority, no judgment, only a profound confusion. "So, you're really not coming back," she said, more a statement than a question. I nodded. She let out a short, brittle laugh. I thought you'd at least miss what we had." I didn't answer, because it no longer mattered. She stood there for a long time before picking up her purse. At the door, she paused without turning around. "Alex," she said, "will you remember today?" I looked out the window, silent. The click of the door closing was soft, but distinct. In that moment, I knew she had finally understood something. I wasn't the one cornering her. She had just lost her last chance to turn back. 06. 3 days after Caroline left my office, the rhythm at Wells Court became noticeably erratic. It wasn't overt panic, but a systemic lag had set in. Approvals that should have taken a week were being kicked back repeatedly. Financial plans that were set in stone were suddenly being revised. Key department heads started seeking constant validation, some even bypassing their direct superiors to get answers. In a large corporation, these are all signs of one thing: a problem at the top. I wasn't actively monitoring the Wells family's internal affairs, but the daily briefings on my desk always included a mention of their name. Wells Corp Project A, funding delayed. Wells Corp Project B, partner demanding risk reassessment. Wells Corp internal restructuring, multiple department heads under review. My assistant delivered these updates in his usual steady tone. I just listened. I offered no opinion. On the fourth day, I got a call. Not from Caroline, from her father. When his name appeared on my screen, I watched it for a second, then hit the silence button. He didn't call a second time. But an hour later, my assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Wells would like to request a private meeting with you," he said. "They said the location and time are at your discretion." I kept my eyes on the document I was reading. "Tell him," I said, "that my schedule is full for the foreseeable future." My assistant nodded and turned to leave. I added one more thing. "From now on, you will handle all similar requests." It wasn't a rejection. It was a boundary. That afternoon, another message came through. The Wells family was now using intermediaries to send feelers. They weren't talking about partnerships. They were testing the waters. Some said the family was willing to renegotiate terms. Others brought up our long history. One even hinted that Caroline wasn't doing well and that I should ease up. I ignored it all. I had my assistant deliver a single, uniform response. "All matters will proceed according to established protocols." The word protocols was its own answer. That night, I attended a closed-door industry summit. It was a small gathering, but everyone there was a major player. I had just taken my seat when someone brought up Wells Corp. "Things seem pretty unstable over there," one man said casually. "Heard a few of their projects are stalled." I smiled but didn't comment. Another person chimed in. "It's not surprising. They expanded too quickly. Their foundation couldn't keep up. I hear tensions are high internally." I lifted my teacup and took a sip. There was no malice in their discussion, no gloating. Just pure, cold analysis. That was more lethal than any attack. After the summit, as I was getting into my car, my assistant called. "Someone from the Wells family is here again," he said. "It's Mrs. Wells this time." I was silent for a moment. "Should I schedule a meeting?" he asked. "No," I said. "Tell her to state her business through you." My assistant confirmed. 10 minutes later, he texted me a summary. Mrs. Wells's message was simple. She was no longer asking about projects or negotiating terms. She was just asking me to give the Wells family some breathing room. I read the message and didn't reply. A request like that was an admission of defeat. The next day, the problems at Wells Corp began to cascade from external pressures to internal fractures. People started pointing fingers. With projects stalled and capital restricted, the most obvious target was management. And within management, the easiest person to blame was Caroline. She had been the primary driver of the company's expansion over the past 2 years. When things were good, the credit was hers. Now that things were bad, the blame was hers too. I heard this from a third party. My assistant, in his report, only said, "The internal debate at Wells Corp is becoming heated." I nodded, not asking for details. By Friday evening, my assistant knocked again. "Mr. Wells would like to speak with you over the phone." "Through me," he said. "No meeting, just a call." I glanced at the time. "Put him through," I said. When the call connected, there were a few seconds of silence on the other end. Mr. Wells's voice was much more subdued than the last time we'd spoken. "Alex," he said, "this is a personal call." I leaned back in my chair, waiting. He continued. "You must be aware of the situation at the company. If this continues, it's not good for anyone." "What are you trying to say?" I asked. "Give the Wells family a way out," he said. A small smile touched my lips. "The way out has always been there," I said. "You're the ones who chose not to take it." He was silent, stumped. After a moment, he tried a different tack. "Caroline has been under a lot of pressure." "That comes with the position," I said. "But you two were." "Mr. Wells," I cut him off. "If this call is about personal history, then we're done here." Silence again on the other end. Finally, he sighed. "Fine," he said. "I won't say any more." The call ended. I placed my phone back on the desk and returned to my work. Outside my window, the sky was darkening. The lights were still on at Wells Corp. But just because the lights are on doesn't mean you're heading in the right direction. The next day, news leaked from inside Wells Corp. The board had convened an emergency meeting. There was only one item on the agenda: damage control. Some argued for scaling back operations. Some insisted on pushing forward. And some started naming names. The debate lasted all morning. In the end, there was no resolution. Only deeper fractures. On my end, everything continued as planned. Project timelines were met. Resources were allocated. Everything moved along its designated track. No one was stopping for the Wells family. As the day ended, my assistant delivered one last piece of news. They've started blaming each other at Wells Corporation. I acknowledged it with a hum. This wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment they finally realized the problem wasn't outside. It was within. 07. After the contentious board meeting at Wells Corp., the person pushed into the spotlight was not Mr. Wells, nor was it Caroline. It was Ryan Vance. His name was brought up again and again, but no longer with titles like partner or core team member. The questions were now, who insisted on hiring him in the first place? And why were so many resources funneled his way? I learned these details 2 days later. I wasn't looking for information. Someone offered it to me. I had just finished a meeting and was about to leave when an associate mentioned, Wells Corp is cleaning house. They're not being subtle about it. I didn't comment. He continued, Ryan Vance is the first one on the chopping block. He said it quietly, but with certainty. I nodded to acknowledge I'd heard. Back in my car, my assistant handed me a new briefing. It was concise, but every point was clear. All projects associated with Ryan Vance had been frozen. His official titles were revoked, and the team that reported to him had been disbanded. Several questionable expense reports filed under his name were now under audit. The final line was a simple note. Has been ordered to cease all external contact on behalf of the company. I closed the file without a second glance. A move like that made the Wells family's strategy obvious. They needed a scapegoat, and Ryan Vance was the perfect fit. That evening, he called me. I was getting ready to leave the office when his number flashed on my screen. I watched it for a second, then answered. The line was silent for a moment. Then came his hushed voice. Alex, he said, can we meet? I didn't answer right away. He rushed to speak again, as if afraid I would hang up. Please, just one last time. Where? I said. He gave me the address of a quiet, out-of-the-way restaurant. I agreed. When I arrived, he was already there. He sat in a corner booth, his silhouette looking smaller than I remembered. A single glass of water sat on the table in front of him. I sat down across from him. He looked up, a flicker of something, maybe hope, in his eyes, but it was quickly extinguished. Thanks for coming, he said. Get to the point, I said flatly. He nodded, as if he had expected nothing less. The Wells family is blaming me for everything, he said. I'm sure you've heard. I have, I said. But I wasn't the one making the final decisions, he said, his words coming faster. Caroline approved those projects. She allocated the resources. I watched him letting him talk. Now, they're cutting me loose, saying I clouded the company's judgment, he said with a bitter laugh. But they were the ones who put me in that position to begin with. His voice was thick with resentment and disbelief. But it was too late. Why did you ask me here? I asked. He hesitated. I need you to say something, he said. If you speak up for me, they won't be so ruthless. I shook my head. I won't. His face froze. Why not? He stared at me. You're the one who started all this. You're wrong, I said. I didn't start it. You did. He looked stunned. I continued. You stood in a place you didn't earn for so long that you started to believe it was your own skill that got you there. But the moment that position was taken away, you were left with nothing. I said the words quietly. They were enough to silence him completely. He looked down, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the glass. After a long moment, he looked up again. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened, he said. And if it weren't for the Wells family, you would never have gotten as far as you did. I countered. But that doesn't mean you can live in their shadow forever. He gave a hollow laugh. So, in your eyes, I was just a pawn the whole time. I nodded. Yes. That single word seemed to drain the last bit of fight out of him. He slumped back against the booth, his eyes vacant. What about Caroline? He asked suddenly. What does she think of me now? She doesn't have time to think about you, I said. It was the truth. Caroline was fighting for her own survival. She had no time for him. He closed his eyes, as if finally accepting his fate. I get it, he said. I stood up. What you do from here is your business, I said. But don't contact me again. He didn't try to stop me. As I walked out of the restaurant, the sky was completely dark. The streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement. The next day, I heard that Ryan Vance had been formally ousted from Wells Corp. It wasn't an internal transfer. It was a complete severance. His name was scrubbed from all their public records. That evening, Caroline was waiting in the parking garage of her office building. Not for me. She stood at a distance, watching as security escorted Ryan Vance out. There was no argument, no dramatic scene. Just a single brief look exchange between them. Then, she turned and walked away. In that moment, she must have finally understood. What she had been protecting wasn't a person or a relationship. It was just a placeholder she had put on a pedestal herself. And now he was gone. 08. The final communication from the Wells family came on a Monday morning. It wasn't a phone call or an unannounced visit. It was a formal meeting request. The email came from the secretary of the Wells Core Board. The language was restrained, containing only a single line. We wish to schedule a final discussion regarding the relationship between our two companies. After reading it, I told my assistant to reply. 1 hour. My office. The location was non-negotiable, offering no middle ground. They arrived exactly on time. Mr. Wells, Mrs. Wells, and Caroline. All three of them. It was the first time I had seen them present a united front, yet they held no advantage. Mr. Wells looked years older, the lines on his forehead etched deeper. Mrs. Wells was still elegant, but the easy confidence was gone from her expression. Caroline walked last. She was dressed simply, without her usual sharp tailoring, as if all her energy was focused elsewhere. After we sat down, no one spoke for a moment. Finally, Mr. Wells broke the silence. Alex, we came today to be clear. I nodded. So did I. He seemed to relax slightly. You're aware of the situation at Wells Corp, he said. Continuing this stalemate benefits no one. And, I asked. We are prepared to adjust our terms, he said. Projects, resources, even changes in management are all on the table. He said this with his head lowered, his tone deferential. It was the first time he had ever spoken to me like that. I didn't respond immediately. I simply opened the file in front of me. These terms have been offered before, I said. I've rejected them every time. Mrs. Wells couldn't hold back. Alex, we're at this point now. Can't you show us any mercy? I looked up at her. I'm all out of mercy, I said. The color drained from her face. Caroline had been silent the entire time. Her gaze was fixed on the tabletop, her fingers resting lightly on the edge of a document, as if waiting for the inevitable. Mr. Wells paused for a few seconds before asking the crucial question. What is it you really want? I closed the file. A clean break, I said. The conference room went utterly still. Mrs. Wells sat up straighter. What does that mean? The engagement is over, I said. The partnerships, the personal history, the shared resources, all of it ends today. Mr. Wells's expression turned grim. You're trying to cut the Wells family out completely. I'm not cutting you out, I said, looking directly at him. You're no longer fit to be in this position. The statement was blunt and final. Mrs. Wells raised her voice. Aren't you afraid that one day, when you're in trouble, no one will be there to give you a second chance? My voice was calm. That will be my problem to solve. She opened her mouth, but couldn't form a reply. It was then that Caroline finally spoke. If back then, her voice was soft, but it silenced the room. I looked at her. There are no ifs, I said. She seemed to have expected that answer. Her expression didn't change much. Her eyes just dimmed a little. So, from the very beginning, you never planned on giving me a chance, she said. I gave you one, I replied. You didn't take it. With that, she fell completely silent. Mr. Wells looked between us, a complex emotion in his eyes. He must have finally realized this wasn't negotiation. It was a reckoning. Fine, he said, his voice heavy. Since you've made up your mind, we won't press the issue any further. He stood, giving his wife a pointed look. Mrs. Wells got to her feet reluctantly, her face a mask of defeat. Caroline was the last to rise. She paused at the door. Without turning back, she asked, Alex, will there ever be a day when you look back and think you were too cruel today? I didn't look at her. No, I said. The soft click of the door closing echoed in the room. The conference room was quiet again. I sat there for a while before finally standing up. My assistant came in. Should I follow up on anything? He asked quietly. No, I said. And the process is planned. That evening, Thorne Industries completed the final severance of all associated projects with Wells Corp. There was no press release, no public statement. From that day on, the name simply no longer appeared on our lists. When I left the office, the sky had already darkened. The city lights blinked on, one by one, and the traffic flowed as it always did. Everything kept moving forward, but some relationships had reached their end. I didn't look back.